Chosen one, be still for a moment, still not just in body, but in spirit, because what you are about to hear is not just another message, it's a divine summons. You didn't just land here by chance. This isn't a scroll and forget moment. This is a divine encounter written in eternity and delivered right on time. God has been whispering your name in the chambers of heaven, and now that whisper has turned into a divine announcement. The time is now. You may have felt it, an invisible pressure pressing against your spirit, a trembling in the unseen as if something ancient and sacred was awakening inside of you. And you're right. That is not your imagination. It is the breath of God brushing past your soul, stirring things that have been dormant for too long. He's calling you out of delay, out of confusion, out of spiritual fatigue, not because you begged loud enough, but because your name was already written into this moment. Because heaven has waited patiently for this alignment. You've asked God when one you've cried, why me? And maybe lately you've whispered, did I miss it? But no, you didn't miss it. You were simply being prepared for it. And now, everything that felt delayed is converging into this holy pause. A divine recalibration is taking place, and this message is your sign. You're not too late. You're right on time for God's appointed hour. The pain you endured in secret was not wasted. The nights you spent clenching your fists in prayer did not go unheard. Something is opening now in the spirit. A veil is being lifted. What was once blocked is being cleared. You're standing on sacred ground, and the voice of the Lord is no longer whispering, He is thundering. Before we step into the full revelation of what heaven is about to release over your life, I want you to do something prophetic. If you feel that this message is aligning with your spirit, if something inside you is saying yes, then I want you to type 777 in the comments right now. Don't hesitate. This is not just engagement. This is agreement. A spiritual signature declaring I'm ready. I receive it. I won't miss my moment. And to those of you who have stood with this message, who've poured out your prayers, left words of encouragement, and especially to those who've sown seeds of faith through super thanks, thank you. Truly from the depth of my heart, thank you. You are not just supporters. You are intercessors, co-builders of a sacred space where healing flows and destiny awakens. I may not be able to respond to every comment, but please believe your light is seen, your love is felt, and your faith is changing more than you know. Now, stay with me, because what's coming next is not just a word, it's a turning point. It's heaven's declaration over your life. And when heaven speaks, nothing stays the same. Let's go deeper. God's chosen ones, the time is now. God's message for you today. The war is over, not just in the realm of men where battles are seen and scars are visible, but in the courts of eternity, where the voice of the Ancient of Days silences every accusation with a single decree. Can you sense it in your spirit, the shift that just occurred in heaven's chambers, where the gavel of the Most High struck the table of justice and every demonic opposition was forced to kneel? You were not merely defended, you were vindicated. What stood against you has now lost its authority. The secret indictments against your name, the unspoken criticisms that haunted your dreams, the lies whispered in spiritual darkness, all of it has been reviewed before the only judge who never sleeps, nor overlooks. And his ruling final, holy, unshakable. The matter is settled. You're no longer on trial. You're no longer under silent siege or spiritual surveillance. Why did it take so long? You wonder, why the years of delay, the storms without warning, the silence that felt like abandonment? Could it be that heaven was not ignoring you, but building a case so thorough that no accusation would ever rise again? Just like Job, who was accused by Satan himself in the divine council. Job 1, 6-12, you too have been brought into a cosmic courtroom, but you didn't lose your faith. And that faith was your testimony. Every ache in your chest was recorded. Every night you wept alone was counted. Every silent prayer, the kind that didn't even make it to your lips, was captured and preserved in heaven's archives. Psalm 56:8 declares, you keep track of all my sorrows. You have collected all my tears in your bottle. You have recorded each one in your book. None of your pain went unseen. None of it was wasted. Can you feel the weight of that truth? Or are you still living as if you're under suspicion? Why wear the cloak of guilt when heaven has already crowned you with grace? This isn't merely a conclusion to a season. It is a divine revelation of your true standing. Hidden in the shadows of spiritual process was a truth too sacred for the public to understand. Your life was under divine observation, not for condemnation, but for preparation. Every time you chose courage over comfort, each time you praised in pain, and every quiet yes to God, they were seeds sown in eternity. Like Ruth, the Moabite widow who followed Naomi in loyalty without knowing it would lead to the lineage of Jesus. Ruth 1:16-17. Your unseen obedience has shifted destinies. The enemy, ruthless and desperate, came with documents meant to destroy you. He cited your past, exploited your wounds, twisted your moments of weakness into weapons. But he did not expect your endurance, nor did he anticipate the judge stepping off the bench and becoming your defense. Romans 8:34 reminds you, who then is the one who condemns? No one. Christ Jesus, who died more than that, who was raised to life, is at the right hand of God and is also interceding for us. You were never alone in the courtroom. The verdict was never uncertain. This reminds me of a young woman named Daniela, who grew up silenced by her family, constantly blamed for their dysfunction. She spent years in therapy, prayer, and silence, believing God had forgotten her. But in a quiet moment during worship, she heard a whisper in her spirit, "You've already been cleared." That day, her life shifted. She stepped into leadership, mentoring hundreds who felt falsely accused just like her. Sometimes the confirmation doesn't come from a public stage. It comes from peace that surpasses understanding. And don't dismiss the beauty of creation that has already mirrored your journey. Look at the ocean after a storm, the way the waves calm the sky, clears, and silence falls like a benediction. Isn't that what your soul feels now? Peace, not because the world stopped fighting you, but because heaven declared your war over. Consider the story of Pope John Paul II, a man of unwavering resolve who forgave the man who attempted to assassinate him. As a spiritual leader, his public forgiveness shook the world, but the real war had already ended in his heart long before the cameras arrived. That is what spiritual authority looks like. Silence in chaos, mercy in injustice, and confidence in God's ruling above man's verdict. So, why do you hesitate to step forward? Now, what are you waiting for when the veil has already been lifted? Can you hear it? The sound of chains, falling doors, opening, the rustling of angel wings, moving into position. Has the pain tricked you into thinking God abandoned you, when in fact He was documenting every moment for your future elevation? You were never forgotten. You were being written into heaven's story. He was pierced violently, intentionally, not as a gesture, but as a transaction. Isaiah 53:5 declares, He was pierced for our transgressions, crushed for our iniquities. The punishment that brought us peace was on Him, and by His wounds we are healed. That wasn't poetry. It was a legal declaration in the highest court of heaven. Blood was the currency, and your name was the purchase. Do you realize the depth of that exchange? You were not leased temporarily or tolerated from afar. You were permanently bought, fully reclaimed, eternally sealed. How would your life look if you truly believed that this wasn't a pardon based on your performance? It was a rescue born out of a love so stable, so unshakable, that even death could not fracture it. Christ didn't just walk into the courtroom to vouch for your character. He traded places with you. Can you imagine the King of Glory standing where you should have stood, accepting the sentence that had your name on it? This wasn't mercy that said you're excused. It was mercy that said, I'll take the fall so you can rise. There's a reason the story of the adulterous woman in John 8 has endured through centuries. She stood surrounded, not by comfort, but by condemnation. The stones in their hands symbolized more than judgment. They symbolized society's pleasure in punishing the wounded. But Jesus didn't quote doctrine. He didn't ask for evidence. He simply said, let the one without sin cast the first stone. And suddenly the courtroom became silent. The accusers melted into the crowd. Then he looked at her, not with disappointment, but with restoration. Neither do I condemn you, he said. That same voice now speaks to your soul. Can you hear it rising over the noise of guilt and shame? You are no longer the one being judged. You are the one who has been declared free. Why live like a prisoner when the prison door has already been opened? Shame may have tried to bury you, but resurrection has already pulled you out. That invisible burden, the constant feeling that you're never enough, it no longer has legal rights to your identity. What if the chains you've been trying to break were already snapped by someone else? Are you holding on to a weight that heaven already released? Like Peter, who denied Jesus 3 times, your story does not end in failure. After resurrection, Jesus didn't chastise Peter. He restored him, asking not for apology, but for love. Do you love me? John 21:15-17. That is the language of restoration, not shame, but invitation. You are now being invited back into full authority, not as one who barely made it, but as one who has been reestablished by heaven's own decree. The doors that once refused to open are now swinging wide. And they're not opening because you forced them. They're opening because heaven has ruled in your favor. In the supernatural rulings, create reality. And what has been ruled above must manifest below. Revelation 3:7 says, what he opens, no one can shut, and what he shuts, no one can open. The doors aren't just symbolic, they are real, and they are spiritual. I remember the story of Elijah Vega, a formerly homeless man who now runs a youth center for fatherless boys. For years, no one believed in his potential. He was discarded by teachers, mocked by employers, and battled addiction alone. But one night after reading Isaiah 53 in a shelter, he whispered a prayer. If you really paid the price, then I want my life back. Within a year, he was clean employed and mentoring others. Today, hundreds of young men call him Papa Elijah. What changed? A divine verdict spoken in silence, enforced through faith. And if you've ever seen a tree after a forest fire, its charred bark tells a story of trauma. But look closer, and you'll see tiny green shoots emerging from the black. Growth doesn't deny pain, it grows through it. Your soul is much like that tree. It remembers the fire, but it didn't surrender to it. Think about Corrie ten Boom, a Dutch Christian watchmaker who hid Jews during the Holocaust. Imprisoned in Ravensbrück concentration camp, she suffered unspeakable horror. Yet, after the war, she traveled the world preaching forgiveness, even shaking hands with one of her former captors. Corrie once said, "There is no pit so deep that God's love is not deeper still." Her story reminds you, even in the harshest trials, grace finds a way to rise. And so will you. Your enemies, the ones who whispered that your meekness was weakness and your patience was passivity, are being scattered, not by revenge, but by divine displacement. Their power over your memory, your identity, your narrative, all of it is being dismantled. Have you noticed the shift? That silent yet undeniable stirring in your spirit? The moment you thought you were breaking was actually the moment you were being rebuilt. You've arrived at a sacred breaking point, but it's not collapse, it's conversion. Something within has realigned slowly, like tectonic plates under the ocean, a shift that shakes nothing on the surface at first, but births mountains over time. You've been under pressure, but you didn't break, and that's what makes you dangerous. That's what makes you chosen. Heaven has watched in silence, not because it was idle, but because it was timing everything perfectly. And now, in the fullness of divine timing, a decree has been issued across the invisible realm. My chosen one will carry this no longer. What you've endured wasn't random. That invisible weight pressing on your chest, the heaviness that refused to lift the pattern of heartbreak, delay, misrepresentation, and abandonment, it was not overlooked. Have you wondered why you felt constantly misunderstood, like your soul was screaming truths that no one had ears to hear? Could it be because you've been walking through a wilderness season designed not to break you, but to shape the strength you now carry? Like Joseph, who was sold by those who should have protected him, falsely accused by Potiphar's wife, and forgotten by the very ones he helped in prison. You too have walked through betrayal, wrapped in proximity. But heaven never turned away. In the same way, God elevated Joseph at the appointed time. Heaven has now chosen your moment. Genesis 50:20 speaks this over your life. You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good, to accomplish what is now being done. That harm did not destroy you. It refined you. You were never buried, you were planted. And now the soil of sorrow has cracked, and the first signs of resurrection are pushing through. What once looked like devastation is now the fertile ground of your emergence. Have you felt the shift? That quiet inner witness, like something sacred is beginning to bloom where bitterness once tried to take root. The accusations, both spoken and unspoken, have been erased from your record. In the courtroom of the Most High, only one word now exists beside your name: set free. Not halfway, not provisionally, entirely. But this freedom isn't the finish line, it's the foundation. You weren't rescued from the fire just to recover your breath. You were drawn out to rise as one who walks in the weight of glory. 2 Corinthians 4:17. This is your commissioning. You are no longer limping forward with wounds wide open. You are advancing crowned in mercy, commissioned with authority. When Lucia Martinez stood trembling on a TEDx stage, she wasn't just speaking, she was reclaiming her story. Once labeled too broken after surviving childhood abuse, Lucia, now an international trauma recovery speaker, declared boldly, "They called me ruined. God called me restored." That day her voice shook, but her authority did not. Do you realize the power of declaring your freedom even when your body still remembers the war? What might shift in your life if you spoke like heaven, already ruled in your favor? Say it out loud. You have no power over me any longer. The highest authority is ruled on my behalf. This isn't just brave talk, it's spiritual legislation. When those words leave your mouth, you're not guessing, you're not begging. You are activating alignment between earth and heaven. This is not emotional hype, it's eternal reality. The power of your declaration is not in the volume, it's in the agreement. In the life of Esther, a decree had already been made to destroy her people. But when she stepped into the king's presence and revealed her identity, everything shifted. The plot against her people collapsed, and a new decree went forth. Esther 7:8. That same anointing is resting on you now. You are stepping forward, not just as a survivor, but as a ruler in realms people never saw you enter. So when the old voices rise again, whether they come from family enemies or even from your own weary thoughts, remember, He is not defending you because He feels sorry for you. He is defending you because He appointed you. Why give your ear to the lies when the throne has already spoken truth? Romans 8:1 reminds you. There is therefore now no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus. You are not the sum of your failures. You are not defined by a single moment, a poor decision, or a season of silence. You are not disqualified by your weakness. Your weakness is the very place where divine power rests. 2 Corinthians 12:9. He sees it all, your trauma, your fight, your restraint when you wanted to retaliate. And what He sees is not a story of shame, but a blueprint of purpose. A young man named Tobias once walked away from ministry after being publicly humiliated by a spiritual mentor. For years, he drifted isolated, bitter, withdrawn. But one night during a rainstorm, he knelt alone in his apartment and whispered, "If you still see me, I'll come back." The next morning, a message from a stranger popped up. "God told me to tell you He never stopped watching." That encounter reignited his calling. Today, Tobias pastors hundreds and mentors young leaders through betrayal and burnout. What if your comeback has already begun, not on stages but in silent moments of surrender? What if your authority was never meant to be loud but unshakable? Even nature confirms this. The eagle does not flap endlessly. It waits for the wind current and then it soars. Are you ready to rise with less effort and more alignment? Are you finally done explaining your pain to people who were never meant to understand it? This moment, this now isn't just a recovery, it's a reintroduction. Heaven knows your name. And this time, you're not coming back with scars. You're returning with fire. You've been taught to strive, to prove, to perform. But in heaven's economy, belovedness is not achieved. It is revealed. You don't have to win His love. You don't have to earn His help. It's already yours. Do you truly know what it means to be chosen before the evidence could validate you? Can you trust that divine selection doesn't operate on your moods or your metrics. Whether you feel bold or broken, distant, or near God's decision about you stands eternal. His protection does not operate on a trial basis. His favor doesn't waver based on how well you've held yourself together. He does not revoke what he has declared. You are not being reevaluated. You are sealed. You have been bought not with silver or symbolic ritual, but with blood that speaks a better word than shame. Hebrews 12:24. You are marked not with ink, but with eternal belonging. You are chosen not accidentally, but precisely. And now, the path opens before you. But this is no slow crawl from defeat. This is ascent, not because you climbed, but because you were lifted. You begin now, not from the dust of despair, but from the high ground of deliverance. Can you allow yourself to rest in this new atmosphere, not just a pause from striving, but a sacred return to the truth that never moved? When life's weight presses like stone on your chest, when your own thoughts roar like waves and threaten to drown your quiet, know this: the one who formed you still stands unchanged, unmoved, and undefeated as your eternal advocate. Isaiah 54:17 says, "No weapon formed against you shall prosper, and every tongue which rises against you in judgment you shall condemn." He is not analyzing you. He is representing you. He speaks not in hesitation, but in authority. And his voice silences every whisper of unworthiness. His love was never circumstantial. It was not born in your performance. It predates your birth, outlasts your worst day, and will not retreat when your strength does. When Christ looked upon Peter, even after Peter denied him, he didn't speak rejection. He spoke assignment. Feed my sheep. That's the love you stand under, not the kind that withdraws when you stumble, but the kind that restores you to purpose. Your present position where you now stand is not the product of striving. It's the result of surrender. Your outcome isn't a reward for perfection, but the manifestation of mercy. Could it be that heaven already decided your outcome long before your faith could even process it? That while you were still searching for answers, heaven was finalizing your freedom. This is what happened to Aiden Ross, a former elite athlete turned mental health advocate. Once celebrated for Olympic wins, he later confessed he felt more broken at the top than at the bottom. But one night, after battling anxiety and depression in silence, he wrote in his journal, "God, if you're still with me, I don't want medals. I want peace." That prayer marked his turning point. Today, Aiden runs a global nonprofit that helps youth navigate identity, value, and inner healing. His success isn't built on talent. It's anchored in surrender. You were declared clean before you ever felt whole. You were pronounced free while still in the cell of confusion. Your record was cleared in a court higher than any earthly authority. The verdict was spoken not just over your mistakes, but over your destiny. And the voice of God still echoes over you. You are mine. You shall live, and you shall thrive. Ezekiel 16:6. Even now, the shadows of old battles try to linger. The echo of pain sometimes sounds like presence. But let's be clear, the war is over. What you feel now is the aftershock, not the warfare. Why react as if you're still under fire when heaven already declared victory? The defining moment wasn't when you stood back up. It was when he spoke life over you. John 10:10 reveals the heart of your Redeemer. I have come that they may have life and have it to the full. That fullness is not pending, it's present. And it's not a feeling, it's a spiritual fact. Selena, a quiet young woman in her early 30s, once thought she had missed her window. After years of job rejection, heartbreak, and spiritual silence, she gave up on the idea of abundance. But one morning, while walking through a garden after a night of tears, she paused beside a blooming fig tree and whispered, "I'm still here." At that moment, she felt peace, like rainfall, wash over her. That same week, an unexpected opportunity opened a job that combined her passion for art and healing. Years later, she now runs a creative therapy center for abuse survivors. The window hadn't closed. It had just been hidden until the right time. And so it is with you. Can you trust the timing of heaven, even when your eyes can't see the gate opening? Can you believe that you're not disqualified, even when your past tries to testify? Otherwise, imagine the hawk, steady, quiet, unhurried, waiting on the thermal current. It doesn't rush, it waits. And when the wind shifts, it ascends without resistance. This is your new posture. You are not struggling to rise, you are aligning with the current of God's decree. You are not clawing for validation. You're stepping into the inheritance already bearing your name. And from this position of stillness, heaven says, live. This was never the end. What you see around you, the dust, the fragments, the residue, is not the wreckage of a ruined life. It's evidence that something unholy has just been demolished. This isn't the debris of destruction. It's the dust of breakthrough. Can you feel it in the air? The atmosphere has shifted. You are not walking away from something that failed you, are walking into something divinely rebuilt, reconstructed by the hands that shaped Eden. The Creator's eyes are on you, and they do not scan for mistakes. They rest on you with immovable favor. His gaze is not cold scrutiny. It is unwavering delight. His intentions toward you are not based on how well you've performed or how much you've endured. They are eternal. Jeremiah 29:11 reminds you, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you a hope and a future." That plan has not expired. It cannot be revoked, not by slander, not by delay, not by your own fear. So when the tremors of anxiety return, when that inner voice dares to whisper, maybe you're still disqualified, you must rise with a louder truth. Will you let lies go unanswered, or will you become the echo of heaven's ruling? Speak it, even if your voice trembles. Write it if you must. Engrave it like prophecy on your bedroom mirror. My position is settled by the Most High. He has declared my victory. Your voice, when aligned with God's, is not merely sound, it is enforcement. Proverbs 18:21 affirms, "Death and life are in the power of the tongue." Do you understand what that means? You're not just reacting, you're legislating. Every declaration, when birthed from belief, bends the unseen realm. This is not poetry. This is spiritual protocol. When you speak in faith, heaven moves. Why stay silent? When your words carry such gravity, I think of Maya Angelou, poet, survivor, and prophetic voice to generations. As a child, her voice was silenced by trauma. She stopped speaking for nearly 5 years, but later in life, her words became thunder across nations. Maya once said, "Words are things. You must be careful about calling people out of their names. Words stick. You chosen, one must realize. When you speak life, you are not merely expressing hope. You are summoning reality." There was indeed a moment, real, spiritual, invisible, when the adversary stepped into the courtroom of eternity. With sinister clarity, he laid out every failure, every wound, every reckless choice you ever made. Can you imagine the weight of that indictment? Every broken place from your childhood, Every moment you lashed out in pain, every bitter root you buried but never fully healed. He dragged them forward like exhibits in a trial. "This one is unworthy," he hissed. "This one is a fraud. This one should be disqualified." The accusation wasn't vague. It was specific, detailed, targeted, and worst of all, it sounded convincing. Have you ever been haunted by lies that sounded like truth? But what happened next dismantled the courtroom itself. Without hesitation, without negotiation, without rebuttal. The Creator did not stay behind the bench. He stepped forward, not as a passive observer, but as judge-redeemer and warrior. He did not entertain the accusations. He crushed them. The voice that once spoke galaxies into being opened again, and this time it was for you. And the moment he spoke, everything shifted. Accusations lost their air. The courtroom fell into reverent silence. The adversary's tongue cleaved to the roof of his mouth. Mercy stood taller than shame. Truth burned through every falsity. And righteousness, holy and furious, swept across the room like fire across dry grass. It reminds me of Gabriel, a 17-year-old boy expelled from school after a fabricated accusation. For months, he sat in silence, ridiculed and abandoned. But his grandmother, a quiet intercessor, would lay hands on his door every night and declare he is not what they say. He is what God called him. Eventually, the truth surfaced. The accuser recanted, and Gabriel was not only reinstated, but offered a scholarship. Today, he leads a student ministry for misunderstood youth. His name was cleared in heaven long before the school board caught up. And still, the battle lingers in your memory. You feel the aftershocks, as if the trial could somehow reopen. But it won't. The case has been closed in the court of the Most High. Do not confuse tremors with threat. The spiritual atmosphere may still echo what once was, but heaven's ruling hasn't changed. Even creation reflects your reality. After a volcano erupts, the land seems lifeless. But beneath the ash, the soil becomes some of the most fertile on earth. Could it be that the fire you endured was preparing the richest ground of your future? Are you willing to believe that the pain didn't kill your purpose? It fertilized it. Just like Daniel, who stood falsely accused in Babylon, thrown into a den of lions, not for rebellion, but for righteousness, you too have faced rooms full of hungry mouths. Yet like Daniel, your silence became your weapon, and the mouths that roared against you were shut by divine order. Daniel 6:22. This is the reality you live in now. Not fear, not survival, but divine settlement. You are not under review. You are under favor. You are not beneath accusation. You are beneath mercy's banner. And the one who redeemed you did not whisper, he thundered. I am he who blots out your transgressions for my own sake and remembers your sins no more. Isaiah 43:25. That wasn't a poetic metaphor. That was a courtroom act, a legal eternal dismissal. The Most High himself issued a holy verdict in your favor, not reluctantly, but for his own delight. The moment your name entered the courtroom of heaven, mercy stood and the charges fell. What does it mean that God chooses to forget what once haunted you? Can you imagine a judge choosing to erase not because of lack of evidence, but because of overwhelming love? The enemy was there, bold, loud, armed with detail. But his case collapsed, not because you were flawless, but because the blood already covered every count. The voice that tried to define you by failure lost all standing. Why? because mercy shouted louder. The price was not partially paid. It was finalized in full. Every sin, every secret shame, every false agreement you once made in pain blotted out. This is the moment you must grasp with holy clarity. Nothing the enemy brings against you can stand. Not now, not ever. Do you understand the gravity of that, what God has begun in you? No trauma, no betrayal, no demonic strategy can reverse. Philippians 1:6 declares, "He who began a good work in you will carry it on to completion until the day of Christ Jesus." Completion is not a wish. It is a guarantee backed by God's own integrity. The accuser no longer has access to the place of judgment. He masquerades as powerful, but lives only through illusion. That's his strategy. Persuasion, not authority. He thrives not in truth, but in distortion. How often have you felt unworthy in rooms where you were already appointed? How often has shame knocked louder than destiny? His greatest weapon is psychological, to convince you that you're still under judgment, that you're unclean, that your progress is superficial, that you'll always be unfinished. But heaven's ruling over you is sealed, and that seal cannot be broken by insecurity, by backlash, or even by your own doubt. Why live as if you're still under review when the highest judge has already ruled in your favor? This reminds me of the biblical story of Joshua, the high priest, in Zechariah 3. Satan stood at his right hand, ready to accuse. Joshua stood clothed in filthy garments. The shame was visible. But God didn't even entertain the accuser. He simply said, "The Lord rebuke you, Satan," and replaced Joshua's garments with clean robes. That is what happened to you. The garments of accusation have been stripped. You now wear robes of righteousness not earned but gifted. This same grace has rewritten stories far beyond ancient scrolls. Take Lecrae, the Grammy-winning artist who once lived under crushing guilt, broken by childhood trauma addiction and public criticism. He spiraled into depression, lost his platform, and questioned his worth in God's kingdom. But grace refused to let go. Through deep healing, accountability, and renewed vision, Lecrae rose again, not just as a rapper, but as a mouthpiece of redemption. Today he speaks unapologetically about identity, mental health, and the power of being reclaimed by God. He didn't earn his robe, it was handed to him the same way it's handed to you. It's time for boldness, not arrogance, but spiritual confidence. Time to rise, to stand taller in your inner posture. Time to carry yourself like one who is not merely forgiven, but claimed. You were not just released from prison, you were recommissioned. You are not tolerated, you are anointed. You are not barely breathing, you are appointed to shine like the sunrise after a storm. Do you know what happens when someone finally realizes they're not cursed, but called? That's exactly what happened to Anaya, a 45-year-old single mother who once believed her struggles disqualified her from ever being used by God. She spent years surviving abuse, working 2 jobs, and hiding her spiritual hunger. One night during a local prayer gathering, a stranger turned to her and said, "You are not forgotten. You are a bright fire." That moment shattered something inside her. Today, Anaya runs a shelter that houses women and children, and she teaches about spiritual identity and restoration. Her story was never about survival, it was about divine appointment. The Lord your God is with you, not in theory, but in the trenches. Zephaniah 3:17 speaks to the present. The Lord your God is with you, the mighty warrior who saves. He will take great delight in you. In his love, He will no longer rebuke you, but will rejoice over you with singing. Can you receive that? The God who governs galaxies singing over you. Even creation mirrors your transformation. Think of the way a caterpillar turns to liquid inside the chrysalis. It doesn't just grow wings, it disintegrates and becomes new matter. What if the pain you felt was actually holy liquefaction, not your ending, but your metamorphosis? And what of the voice that once roared against your name? That dark force who dared to oppose the will of God, that ancient liar, has now been overruled. His accusations were once loud, but now they echo in silence. His blueprints of sabotage have unraveled. His weapons, once tailored to your weakness, have been returned to sender. This is not motivational fluff. This is spiritual reality. When heaven rules, hell retreats. And heaven has ruled. You are not walking alone. Don't let the silence between miracles deceive you. You are being escorted, surrounded by the presence of the Almighty, and upheld by the very banner of heaven's victory. This is not poetic symbolism, it is spiritual fact. You move forward, not as an orphan of pain, but as a citizen of divine redemption. You belong not to what tried to bury you, but to the one who resurrected you. Does your soul resonate with this? Do these words echo, not as foreign hope, but as ancient truth you've always known, deep down? If something within you stirs right now, if your spirit is rising, not with confusion, but with clarity, then the time for hesitation is over. Why remain passive when the divine has already declared the way clear? Why walk as though lost when the shepherd has already spoken your direction? Let your posture align with what your spirit has already agreed to. Let your actions mirror the faith that's been quietly burning inside you all along. This is the moment when heaven calls you not to perform, but to respond, not to impress, but to agree. When you open your mouth and declare what God has already sealed in heaven, you are not reciting, you are legislating. Your words become spiritual instruments. You're not affirming possibilities, you're activating promises. Psalm 107:2 commands, "Let the redeemed of the Lord say so, whom he has redeemed from the hand of the enemy." Have you said it aloud? Have you dared to agree with your deliverance? You speak boldly, not out of obligation, but because your soul knows. Because gratitude rises in your chest like a holy fire. Because something sacred in you remembers what it cost to be brought out of darkness. Speak as one who has passed through the valley. Speak as one who has seen the storm and now sees the sunlight breaking through. Do your words reflect the radiance of your release? This is not performance, this is partnership. Not perfection, but presence. What if your reverence is the very portal through which fullness enters your life? What if your worship is not a song, but a surrender of fear, pride, and delay? I think of what happened to Elijah on Mount Horeb. The prophet who had once called fire from heaven now stood trembling in a cave waiting for direction. But God did not speak through the wind or the earthquake or the fire. He spoke through a whisper. 1 Kings 19:12. That whisper became the turning point. That whisper commissioned him forward. And for you too, this moment isn't grand in the eyes of the world, but it is divine. It's not loud. It's holy. Grasp this. This time in your life is not random. This timing, this now has been written by the author of time himself. You're not just drifting into this moment, you've been drawn. The invisible hand of God has orchestrated this precise intersection. Are you aware how sacred this is? This is a divine appointment, not a coincidence. A holy threshold, a supernatural pivot. The enemy has already been defeated. The false pathways have collapsed. The inner fog is lifting. The favor of God is not a future wish. It's already moving, already constructing behind the veil, already blooming like roots in soil before the shoot breaks through. Can you feel it? This same shift happened to a woman named Nadine, a 38-year-old hospice nurse who had grown numb to her own pain. After caring for the dying for over a decade, she stopped believing her own life could be full. But one evening, sitting in her car under a dark sky, she whispered, "God, if you're still writing, I want to live again." That whisper became her crossing. Within weeks, doors opened to scholarship, a retreat, a new beginning. Today, Nadine leads a nonprofit teaching grief care through music and prayer. Her holy threshold wasn't a stadium moment, it was a soft yes. Even creation reflects this sacred turn. Think of the moment when a tide begins to shift. It is not loud or dramatic, but every drop of water begins to change direction. The sand adjusts, the wind alters, the ocean obeys a cosmic rhythm. That is what's happening inside you right now. You're not reacting to life anymore. You are realigning with the rhythm of eternity. And there comes a point in every sincere journey where the presence of God ceases to be theory and becomes encounter. A moment when you don't just believe with your mind, but your entire body, soul, and spirit come into alignment. Have you reached that place yet? That threshold where your atmosphere shifts and the breath in your lungs feels like it was borrowed from heaven? In the life of St. Francis of Assisi, this transformation was profound. Born into wealth and comfort, he gave everything away after an encounter with Christ in a crumbling church. It wasn't theology that changed him, it was presence. He said, "What we are looking for is what is looking." That realization that you were never disconnected, only asleep, shifted his path forever. Could the same be true for you right now? Every impossible situation in your life stands at attention, not because of your strength, but because of who now stands with you. The one who rules outside of time, the King, whose verdict ends every argument, is present. And his presence changes everything. This is that moment. Not tomorrow, not later, not someday. This is the collision point between heaven's agenda and earth's limitations, and it has been written in eternity, long before you felt the tremor in your spirit. This is not another delay, dressed in spiritual language. This is not just another test of endurance. This is divine intervention in real time. The Almighty has not merely dispatched blessings. He has come himself. There are circumstances so heavy, so eternally significant, that only his personal presence will suffice. And when God steps in, everything changes. Not gradually, not subtly, instantly. Exodus 14:14 declares, "The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still." Do you realize what that means? You're not being asked to force breakthrough. You're being asked to witness it. Look around your life. The subtle shifts, the gentle nudges in your spirit, the doors that opened right as your prayers left your lips. Were these coincidences, or were they divine breadcrumbs pointing you to this moment? Can you remember those strange alignments, the canceled plans that led to revelation, the connections you didn't orchestrate? Those were not random. They were signs. You weren't being ignored. You were being prepared. Now God is no longer near in theory. He is near in action. He has stepped into the room of your conflict, into the very heart of your hardship, into the battlefield of your body, your finances, your inner torment. What kind of love steps into fire, not just to pull you out, but to transform the fire into glory? When the Creator moves, He doesn't consult committees. He doesn't negotiate with darkness. He doesn't pause to gather consensus. He commands. He breaks generational patterns in a single breath. He tears down emotional prisons. He silences confusion with one word. And when He speaks, everything that once stood proud in rebellion begins to tremble. This happened in the life of Hezekiah, king of Judah. Surrounded by Assyrian armies facing annihilation, Hezekiah prayed. That night, without a single sword lifted by man, God sent an angel, and 185,000 soldiers fell. 2 Kings 19:35. No debate, no struggle, just divine decision. That's the kind of intervention you're standing under. And even now, in the unseen things are shaking. The fear that kept you captive, the lack that haunted your finances, the hidden illness, the relationship that eroded your peace, the words you never said but carried like daggers. All of it bending under the pressure of divine power. Can you sense it? Not hope, movement. Not wish, shift. This is not merely a spiritual encouragement. It is a material transformation. The situation that once opposed you no longer holds position. Its legal right has been revoked. The waiting that felt endless is breaking. The voice that told you you'd never be enough has been muted by thunder that speaks in your favor. And in this thunder, there is no ambiguity. God is not touching just one area of your life. He is stepping into all of it. Your spirit, yes, but also your body, your bloodline, your finances, your assignments, your legacy. Jeremiah 32:27 proclaims, I am the Lord, the God of all mankind. Is anything too hard for me? That verse isn't theoretical. It's active. It's alive in your life today. A woman named Carla, a single mother of 3, once stood on the verge of eviction. She had tithed faithfully, served quietly, and still faced closed doors. One morning, overwhelmed, she laid hands on her fridge, her bills, and her children. God, she whispered, you said nothing is too hard for you. Within 48 hours, an anonymous donor covered her rent for 6 months. Today, Carla teaches financial literacy and faith to struggling mothers. Her miracle wasn't money, it was movement. And look at Tyler Perry. Before the world knew his name, he was sleeping in his car, rejected by industry gatekeepers, mocked by critics, and laughed out of rooms. But he kept writing, kept praying, kept believing that what God whispered in private would one day speak loudly in public. When his breakthrough came, it wasn't subtle. It was seismic. Today he owns one of the largest film studios in the world on land that once served as a Confederate military base. That's not just success, that's redemption. That's what happens when heaven overrides history. Even nature echoes what's happening inside you. Think of the tectonic plates beneath the earth, silent, unseen. Yet when they shift, mountains rise. What you feel right now may seem like pressure, but it's actually placement. You're being moved into position for something that could not be built without shaking the foundations. This is what happened to Moses at the Red Sea. With no escape, with enemies behind and ocean ahead, he stood still. And then God moved, not around the sea, but through it. Exodus 14. Could your greatest breakthrough be coming not by avoidance, but by impossible passage? You've come too far to treat this as a mere season. This is not a test. This is an intervention, a divine arrival, a holy unblocking. The things that defied your calling are losing footing. The spirits that mocked your potential are backing up. This is what it looks like when God invades. And just as a solar eclipse suddenly overtakes the sky, momentarily silencing light and then revealing it in a new dimension, your story is entering its bright unveiling. What was concealed in darkness is now being seen in power. Don't wait for external validation. Respond to the internal confirmation. You were not built for delay. You were fashioned for deliverance. This is not merely encouragement, it is execution. What you are witnessing, feeling, sensing deep within is not just divine comfort. It is a divine decree in motion. The heavens are not offering you symbolic peace. They are issuing orders. What was once blocked is no longer barricaded. The flow has begun. And not just with subtle momentum, but with forceful clarity. This is not an invitation to hope. This is a command to rise. Heaven is not still. God has not remained in observation. The Lord mighty in confrontation has arisen, not passively, not hypothetically, but actively, fiercely, with full dominion. And when the Almighty moves, He does not send representatives. He steps in Himself. Have you felt it? That inner shift, unexplainable but undeniable. That sense that something has begun, even if nothing yet appears, changed externally. Even now, as these words pierce the atmosphere around you, something profound is unfolding in the unseen. A holy shift is breaking open realms above you. It may not yet be visible to the natural eye. Your circumstances might not yet echo the movement, but your spirit already testifies. You've felt it, haven't you? That inexplicable calm, that sudden clarity, that moment of peace that had no logical source. What if that wasn't emotion? What if it was a signal from eternity? God is stirring your atmosphere with a force that transcends time, intellect, and history. Chosen one, hold this truth like a sword. A transformation has already begun. Though invisible to others, it is undeniable to your inner being. You're not guessing, you're remembering. The clarity you've sensed is not a trick of the mind, it's a divine transmission from the throne room of God. You were not just thinking hopeful thoughts. You were receiving divine downloads. Heaven has been communicating in codes only the spiritually tuned can perceive. What's been happening to you, the way your perception sharpened, your discernment deepened, was not imagined. It was implanted. You didn't learn this. You inherited it. This is what happened to Elisha in 2 Kings 6. When surrounded by a hostile army, his servant panicked, but Elisha prayed, "Open his eyes, Lord, so that he may see." And suddenly the servant saw angelic armies surrounding them. That same clarity is now resting upon you. You see differently, not because you're better, but because you've been anointed to perceive what others overlook. You were not emotionally deceived. You were spiritually aligned. You gave space to situations without demanding clarity, allowing truth to reveal itself. You didn't need confrontation. You operated in discernment. That is not weakness. That is wisdom, sharpened by warfare. This kind of clarity is the mark of those who lead in silence. It reminds me of Pope Benedict XVI, a theologian and spiritual architect of modern Catholic thought, often misunderstood for his quiet intensity and traditional convictions. He rarely responded to media backlash or political provocation. When asked why, he once said, "Truth is not determined by a majority vote." His restraint wasn't passivity, It was spiritual clarity. Like you, he saw through noise. He didn't react. He discerned. And because of that, he shaped the faith of millions without ever shouting. It is the same gift that operated through the prophet Samuel. When all eyes favored Eliab, the tall, impressive brother of David, Samuel saw past the armor and into the heart. Man looks at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. 1 Samuel 16:7. And Samuel, aligned with heaven, anointed David the least likely in man's view, but the chosen of God. You walk in that same kind of clarity. Do you realize what a threat that makes you? You are no longer reacting from pain. You are discerning from truth. And it shows. This is the moment Julian Rivera stepped into at age 42. A once renowned architect in Madrid, he had walked away from his firm after a moral scandal, not because he was guilty, but because he refused to expose the truth. For 3 years, he remained hidden, unemployed, silent. But one evening, while walking along the Tagus River, he felt a surge in his chest and heard internally, "Now you see clearly." That night, he sketched again, this time, not blueprints for buildings, but for rehabilitation centers. Today, Julian leads an international architectural movement that designs healing spaces for survivors of injustice. His vindication didn't come through proof, but through presence. Even the natural world testifies to what is happening in you. Consider the deep ocean, silent, dark, pressurized. And yet beneath the surface, currents shift continents. You're no longer in still waters. Something in your spirit has moved. The pressure is not crushing you. It is reshaping your foundation. This isn't intuition. It is spiritual governance. You've reached the place where truth is no longer something you hear, it's something you become. And from this place, you don't just observe the world, you influence it. The Lord is confirming this with fire, not whispers. The gift of discernment is not for decoration. It is a tool of survival, of navigation, of holy confrontation. It is why you feel when others are hiding, why you sense duplicity before it's spoken, why you're not confused when others pretend to be. And what do you do with such clarity? You rise. You stand tall, not arrogantly, but authoritatively. You trust what God has shown you, even if others cannot understand it yet. This is not your imagination. This is your ordination. So declare it, even if softly I see with heaven's eyes. I move by heaven's timing. I am guided by heaven's voice. This is your reality now. You are walking in revelation, not assumption. That kind of holy sight now flows within you, not as a burden, but as a commission. It did not enter through argument. It arrived in stillness. And what you saw in the stillness cannot be unseen. How did you know before anyone confirmed it? Why did you feel the shift before a word was spoken? Because the truth was not presented to you, it was awakened within you. That sacred knowing is not arrogance. It is evidence of divine intimacy. You weren't waiting for data or permission. What you sensed came from the inner chamber, the private room of revelation that only God opens. It is the sanctuary of discernment, the realm where lies suffocate and clarity breathes freely. Have you ever wondered why you feel what others miss? Why silence speaks louder to you than shouting? It's because you weren't taught you were trusted. The Most High saw fit to grant you insight not everyone could carry. This kind of clarity is rare, and it isn't loud. It doesn't demand attention. It walks quietly, but shifts atmospheres. While others ran to be seen, you stood still and watched. When voices clashed and chaos surged, you stayed grounded. You moved from the depths, not the surface. That is not inaction. It is endurance, rooted in revelation. This reminds me of Pope Benedict XVI, the German theologian and former pope, known for his quiet brilliance. Often criticized for being too reserved in a loud world, he once said, "Truth is not determined by a majority vote." He didn't fight noise with more noise. He carried a stillness forged in eternal things, much like you. His strength wasn't reaction. It was rootedness. Your presence isn't powerful because it overtakes rooms. It's powerful because it anchors them. And when the storms rise, it is your stillness that silences them. Why do people trust you without knowing why? Why do others come to you in moments of confusion? Because your clarity is not just mental, it is spiritual. And spirit recognizes spirit. The same wisdom was seen in Esther, who risked everything by entering the king's court, not with weapons, but with strategy. Formed in prayer, she fasted, she waited, she listened. And then she moved not to be bold, but because boldness had been born in the quiet. Her strength wasn't in her appearance, it was in her restraint. Yours is too. This wisdom has also been seen in architect Elena Duval, a woman whose designs reshaped post-earthquake communities in rural Chile. When investors demanded quick builds, she insisted on silence, literally. She'd walk the ruined streets at dawn alone, just to listen to the earth, the wind, the spaces where grief still lingered. She said, "If we don't build with peace in mind, we will only repeat the tremors with our own hands." The clarity she carried couldn't be drawn on blueprints. It was spiritual. The same spirit that guided her guides you. This is not simply intuition. It is the gift of discernment, the ancient gift that allowed the prophet Samuel to look past Eliab's warrior stature and recognize David, the overlooked shepherd. As 1 Samuel 16:7 declares, "Man looks at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart." You've felt that tug before. A knowing, a no when everyone shouted yes. A pause in your spirit when everyone rushed ahead. That isn't doubt, that's discernment. The quiet urge to wait has saved you more times than you realize. And in those moments, your obedience wasn't seen, but heaven recorded it. How often have you allowed others to speak while you simply observed, not because you lacked conviction, but because truth does not beg for space, it waits to be received. That's why when you finally do speak, it lands, because what you carry has weight. And the mouth of the righteous, as Psalm 37:30 says, speaks wisdom, and his tongue talks of justice. The Lord sees this walk, not the public one, but the inner one, the choices made when no one is looking. The way you guard your thoughts like gates, the refusal to retaliate when misunderstanding could easily be met with rage. That's not weakness, that's consecration. Have you noticed the quiet shift in your own soul lately? The calm that entered without knocking, that was not random. It was the signal that your atmosphere is being prepared. A holy threshold is opening. Not everyone is invited here. Not all can walk this stretch with you. That's not cruelty, it's covenant. You're no longer waiting for open doors. You are becoming one. This season is not about popularity or proximity to crowds. It's about proximity to the cloud, the divine presence that hovered with Moses, that whispered to Elijah, that parted the Jordan for Joshua. When you follow the cloud, you walk a path others may question, but heaven affirms. Have you ever seen a monarch butterfly soar over storms, They don't flap in panic. They ride the wind above the turbulence carried by currents they do not control, but completely trust. So it is with your discernment. It doesn't strive. It flows. And the wind beneath you is not ordinary. It is sacred. Now, chosen, one you are not being asked to perform, but to remember. Remember who called you. Remember who gave you sight when others were blind. Remember that the flame inside you is not self-generated. It is placed there by the one who whispered light into the void. As you move, atmospheres tremble. Your very presence shifts the emotional weather around you, not because you're trying to be noticed, but because light never enters a space quietly. Peace unsettles those still at war with themselves. Truth when embodied convicts. And yet you were never called to be the center of attention, only a reflection of the one who is. Your life is not a spotlight. It is a mirror. What if your strength was never meant to draw eyes to you, but to redirect hearts toward heaven? Can you rise without needing to be recognized? Can you walk in clarity without demanding credit? Stay centered. Stay small before Him. Remain grounded in purity, not performance. Jesus said in Matthew 5:16, "Let your light so shine before others that they may see your good works and glorify your Father in heaven." The purpose of your glow is not applause, it is glory. As you ascend in influence, never forget who lifted you. As your voice grows clearer, never forget whose breath shaped it. There's no room for ego in the holy. The Spirit leads you step by step, not through comparison or competition, but through terrain tailor-made for your transformation. Why rush when God is the one pacing your steps? You were elevated not to be admired, but to be positioned. This rise isn't for vanity, it's for assignment. You have been placed to love deeply, to lead from stillness to anchor peace when chaos shouts. This shift in your life is not isolation, it is consecration. You're not alone in this sacred separation. The Lord surrounds you. His Spirit walks before you, and His angels are flanking your steps with divine precision. What seemed like a lucky escape or a strange intuition, it was Him. Every time your spirit stirred and you couldn't explain why, He was whispering. Every time you were spared from harm, redirected from a decision, or awakened from complacency, He was moving. Nothing is random in a life yielded to heaven. What looked like failure was simply the ground being cleared for glory. What felt like pressure was actually expansion. Could it be that what nearly crushed you was the very thing stretching your soul to hold what's coming? This is the mystery of divine refining. He does not wound to harm. He prepares through fire. Ezekiel 36:26 anchors this truth. I will give you a new heart and put a new spirit in you. That's what's happening. Now, your old survival self is melting, and your original design is being restored, not reinvented, revealed. The true you planted by God before your first breath is emerging. And in that emergence, things once comfortable now feel foreign. Patterns that once calm now feel constrictive. It's not confusion, it's ascension. Like Mary Magdalene, once imprisoned by 7 demons, you are not defined by your past battles, but by the encounter that changed everything. Luke 8:2. She became the first to witness the resurrected Christ. Why? Because she knew what it meant to be transformed. Like her, you're not merely healing, you're becoming holy. And with every moment of surrender, the false strength forged through striving begins to fall away. What now strengthens you is not hustle, but humility. Not effort, but divine energy. Not volume, but the stillness that listens. The deeper your discernment grows, the quieter your spirit becomes. Doubt retreats in a presence of sacred certainty. There's a woman named Mara whom no one ever heard of, a caretaker in a rural town who buried both parents in her 20s, cared for abandoned children, and never once left her village. She spent more time in prayer than public platforms. When she passed at age 70, her funeral overflowed with lives she had quietly transformed. No book, no stage, no podcast, just legacy. She never craved recognition. She carried revelation. Could it be that the unseen path is the most eternal one? Viola Davis once said she didn't just grow up in poverty. She grew up in deprivation. No running water roaches crawling on her face at night, shame wrapped around her name like a second skin. But she didn't ascend by chasing fame. She healed by reclaiming her voice. Before the red carpets and gold statues, there were years of silence, soul work, and surrender. You can't outrun trauma, she said, but you can meet it with truth. And it was in that meeting that a sacred emerged. Not applause alignment, not platform purpose. What raised her wasn't the world. It was the unraveling, the remembering, the release. Look at the mountains, they never shout, but their majesty speaks. Or the pearl born from irritation refined in silence. That's your journey. The process hurt, but the outcome will shimmer with God's fingerprints. You were never falling apart. You were falling open. And the tears you once resented were not weakness. They were offerings, altars, agreements with heaven made in silence. What felt like a delay was actually an invitation. What looked like closed doors were divine walls rerouting you to the narrow path. The heartbreaks were not punishments, they were protection. He never abandoned you. Not in the waiting, the weeping, or the wandering. The unraveling you feared is now revealing what was always sacred. And this is the turning point. You are laying down the identity built in trauma, striving, and survival. The part of you shaped by scarcity and people-pleasing is dissolving. And what emerges is not a version 2.0. It is the eternal version. Ephesians 2:10 sings this truth over you, for we are His workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works, which God prepared beforehand that we should walk in them. You're not breaking down, you're breaking through. What feels like loss is sacred subtraction, heaven clearing space for what only holiness can inhabit. That ache in your soul, it's not abandonment, it's expectancy. The false self is crumbling not to erase you, but to expose the image of God within you. Tyrese, a young man from Detroit who was once a gang member, survived 3 near-death experiences. After the last one, he started writing music in his grandmother's basement, songs full of scripture, pain, and prophecy. Today, his music heals thousands. When asked what changed, he simply said, God stripped me to save me. That's what's happening now. Stripping that saves. Loss that makes room. Clarity born from fire. You cannot resist this release. It was destined. It's in your blueprint. What you're stepping into is not a surprise, it's a fulfillment. The past is no longer your prison. Let it fall away with grace. You are not mourning who you were. You're rising into who you've always been. You are not merely changing. You are ascending into your divine nature, your heavenly code, your eternal assignment. And this shift, no man can stop it. No burden can block it. No shadow can dim what the Lord has lit. This is not your collapse. It is your unveiling. What you feel unraveling around you is not the end. It's the beginning of something too sacred to be built on old structures. The tension in your chest, the questions echoing in your silence, the ache that feels almost holy. It's not breaking you. It's breaking you open. Can you feel it? That subtle shift inside you, the tremor of transformation already underway. You're not spiraling into despair. You're being summoned into design. What looks like falling apart is actually heaven rearranging everything according to divine blueprints. This isn't ordinary change, it's holy transition. Even now, something eternal is stirring with each breath you take. Something ancient and appointed is rising in you, not as ambition, but as awakening. Can you discern it behind the noise? This is not personal growth. This is divine movement. You are not drifting in uncertainty. You are being drawn by the hand of the Almighty into terrain you could not have charted on your own. You are standing on the edge of a threshold, not built by logic or ambition, but by prophetic appointment. Like Abram, standing under the stars, uncertain of the road ahead, yet willing to move, simply because God spoke, Genesis 12:1-4. So too are you being called to walk by trust, not by template. The distance between where you've been and where you're going is narrowing, and you feel it, the holy tension in your bones, the stillness that doesn't feel empty, but filled with a sacred urgency. There are moments coming that will not come again. Can you afford to hesitate when heaven is extending its hand? Can you afford to bring yesterday's burdens into a space meant for your rebirth? There is a narrow window opening before you, and it is holy. You are being beckoned forward, not by pressure, but by promise. But such an invitation demands full surrender, no divided hearts, no fragmented yes. Joshua's words echo, "Now choose this day whom you will serve." Joshua 24:15. What if your greatest act of power is not in grasping, but in releasing? Letting go is not weakness. It is wisdom, wrapped in obedience. If your soul must fast, let it fast with fire. If you must pray, let it be like breath, constant, desperate, unfiltered. Strip away anything that crowds your vision. This is not a time to perform for the blessing. This is the moment to become the vessel heaven already recognizes. This isn't just about stepping into your future. It's about stepping into an entirely new way of being. A place where intellect cannot lead and ego cannot survive. Where surrender becomes access and trust becomes your transportation. Isaiah 1:19 declares, "If you are willing and obedient, you shall eat the good of the land." The requirement is not perfection. It is willingness. You don't need to feel qualified. You only need to say yes. And when that yes aligns with heaven's decree, all of creation begins to respond. What once resisted you now unfolds. What once felt heavy now lifts. Have you noticed the veil growing thinner? The world around you slowing, softening, almost breathing with you. This is not delusion. It's not fantasy. It is spiritual alignment. And when the Lord stirs your destiny, even the earth will obey. Elijah once prayed, and the rain came after 3 years of drought. 1 Kings 18:41-45. His yes created a cosmic shift. Your obedience holds that same authority. Can you believe the doors opening for you aren't random? They are response. The singer-songwriter Lauren Daigle, once rejected on American Idol, was told she wasn't memorable enough. Years later, she would top global Christian charts win Grammy Awards, and testify to how surrender, not strategy, opened her path. She once said, "When I let go of what I thought I needed, God gave me what I never dreamed." That's the pattern of heaven, not reward for control, but glory born of trust. And there's a story few know of Elias, a 55-year-old janitor in a hospital who never preached, never traveled, never posted a sermon. But every morning before dawn, he walked the halls and prayed over each room. One night, a nurse caught him weeping over a dying patient's chart. "They don't know someone is praying for them," he whispered. When that patient survived, unexpectedly, her family called it a miracle. Elias never told them it was the 124th room he'd prayed for. Sometimes, the ones who shift history never hold a microphone, only oil. Can you move like the tide pulled by a moon you cannot see yet, certain it is real? Can you step with rhythm? Even if your feet still shake, heaven is not requiring clarity, only courage. This is not your effort, trying to help God. This is God moving through your availability, and in this sacred posture, the world becomes pliable. Time slows, coincidences multiply, patterns emerge, the right words, the right hands, the right silence. You start to see heaven in the details. What once felt ordinary now glows with eternal fingerprints. The stranger who offers a word that echoes your secret prayer. The job opportunity that appears just after a door closed. The dream that lingers like prophecy. What if it's all aligning because you finally are? You won't feel this confirmation in your mind. It will resound in your spirit like a sacred pulse. You'll know, I am being led, not by logic, not by trends, but by the still unshakable pull of the Holy One. Proverbs 3:6 affirms it. In all your ways acknowledge Him, and He shall direct your paths. You'll begin to notice that what once felt comforting survival mechanisms, shallow conversations, fearful striving, now feels hollow. Not because something is wrong with you, but because something divine is waking up inside you. You weren't created to shrink, to settle, or to simply survive. You were built to become. There is a sacred design within you, crafted before time, that refuses to be satisfied with stagnation. You were not made for the shallows of certainty. You were made for the depths of divine mystery. Are you willing to follow even when the map dissolves in your hands? What if the unease you're feeling isn't confusion but confirmation that you're standing at a threshold only heaven could construct? You're not imagining it. The restlessness, the tingling in your chest, the gravitational pull towards something you can't explain, that is recognition. Your spirit knows this terrain. You've stood in this moment before, not in flesh, but in eternity, when your assignment was whispered in the courts of heaven. Like Jeremiah, whose destiny was spoken before he was formed, Jeremiah 1:5. You too are being reminded of what's always been true. The signs are everywhere, repeating numbers, persistent symbols, divine delays that make no human sense. The same message showing up in dreams, conversations, even song lyrics. Are you paying attention? These are not coincidences. They are guideposts, heaven's breadcrumbs leading you toward the moment that changes everything. But the door won't remain open forever. Some gates are designed to respond only to a full-hearted yes, not a maybe, not a someday. A yes rooted in courage, not clarity. Will you enter the sacred shift or delay until the invitation expires? This isn't fear. This is urgency. The same urgency that stirred Noah to build before the rain, and Esther to speak before the gallows rose. Divine moments have expiration dates, not because God's love expires, but because windows for certain assignments are time-bound. This is not a season for hesitation. This is not a time to overthink, overanalyze, or wait until all the lights turn green. Heaven is calling you to walk by trust, not by explanation. Proverbs 3:5 resounds like a drumbeat. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. The old you might demand details, but the real you knows destiny doesn't wait for spreadsheets. It responds to surrender. And in this surrender, there is a great release. Lay down the self you constructed for survival. Let go of the identity shaped by striving and comparison. That shell of you, the one you had to wear just to make it through, is dissolving like mist before sunrise. You are not being erased. You are being revealed. What if the identity you outgrew was never your truth to begin with? This moment is not failure. It's divine recalibration. The Spirit of God is gently untangling you from every illusion, every label, every expectation that kept you small. And yes, there may be disorientation. Yes, it may feel like your soul is floating. But so does a butterfly on the edge of release. What you feel now is not breakdown. It is breaking open. Revelation 21:5 proclaims it boldly. Behold, I make all things new. Influence, born of stillness. Authority, born of peace. You're stepping into a realm where divine rhythm replaces earthly pressure, where ambition is exchanged for alignment. Can you trust this quieter path? Can you let the whisper guide you, even when your surroundings demand a shout? The artist Makoto Fujimura, known for his slow, meditative painting style, once said, "God doesn't waste anything, not even the waiting." After surviving career rejection, he returned to ancient Japanese techniques, requiring weeks for a single layer to dry. His faith and art merged into a global voice for beauty and brokenness. That is what divine timing births: slow glory, sacred legacy, healing influence. There's also Amira, a once high-achieving executive who burned out at 38 and disappeared from corporate life. For 2 years, she lived in a remote mountain town, making pottery in silence. One night, while shaping clay, she felt something shift in her chest. Not panic, but peace. She whispered, "I don't want to be important. I want to be aligned." She later opened a healing center for trauma survivors, combining clay prayer and storytelling. Her life is no longer fast, but it is full. And sometimes the lesson is echoed not just in stories or scripture, but in the way the earth itself behaves. Deep in the Pacific, scientists once observed an ancient coral reef that had survived for millennia, not by resisting the currents, but by yielding to them, bending, adapting, thriving in stillness between the storms. It did not grow by force, it grew by rhythm, by surrender to the deeper tides. What if your soul is learning the same? That growth is not always loud. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it's blue. Sometimes it waits beneath the surface until the light reaches it. This is your invitation. The quiet knowing inside you is not weakness. It is awakening. What once seemed impossible now feels inevitable. You've seen the signs. You've felt the pulse. Will you step forward or retreat into the illusion of safety? This journey is not about dramatic leaps. It's about sacred consistency, alignment over adrenaline, presence over pressure. Every morning before you reach for the noise, reach inward. Before you perform, become still. Wake gently. Whisper this prayer not with striving but with surrender. My Lord, I am here. Let me hear you before the world begins. You're not chasing clarity anymore. You're walking in communion. The veil is thinner. The unseen is speaking. The yes in your soul is echoing in heaven. Sit in stillness, not to perform, not to strive, but simply to be. Stillness is not passivity. It is presence, and presence is power. In a world addicted to movement, your surrender to silence becomes a sacred protest. The kingdom doesn't require volume to validate you. It welcomes awareness. What if awareness was your prayer? What if heaven didn't need your eloquence, just your willingness to pause? As you go about your day and your work, your errands, your rest, carry that divine awareness like a cloak. Not every holy act requires a scripture. Sometimes holiness sounds like your tone softening when you're tired or your attention turning towards someone unseen. Speak not to impress, but to reflect. Act not from reaction, but from revelation. Can you hear the subtle invitation in the moments you usually overlook? A gentle pull to forgive someone before bitterness hardens. A quiet urge to pause before responding. A sudden impulse to bless when you could withhold. These are not passing moods. They are promptings of the Spirit. John 10:27 affirms this mystery. My sheep hear my voice, and I know them, and they follow me. You are not guessing, you are hearing. Respond quickly. Let forgiveness move through you like breath. Drop what no longer aligns with your becoming. These aren't small gestures. They are acts of warfare disguised as grace. When you listen and obey in these moments, you transform everyday space into holy ground. Like Moses removing his sandals before a burning bush, your response to stillness becomes a response to presence. Guard your soul's gates. Be mindful not just of what you eat, but what you consume through sight, sound, and conversation. You are more porous now, more spiritually tuned. This is not fragility, it is refinement. You are being prepared for deeper communion. Your peace is not a luxury. It is your lifeblood. It's where you hear heaven clearly. Can you protect your stillness the way you protect your time or finances? Return to simplicity. Choose what slows your breath, what awakens your soul. When fear rises, don't fake your way through it. Face it, acknowledge it. Then plant your feet on this. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? Psalm 27:1. Fear cannot lead where light has already claimed dominion. Creation has always been your quiet teacher. Watch how trees bend with the wind and never lose their root. Watch how rivers find their way around stone without resistance. Even in the natural world, God is whispering, "This is how you move with me." You were not made to force forward. You were made to flow in rhythm with divine orchestration. When doubt creeps in, and it will turn to gratitude, not as a bypass, but as a bridge. Write it, say it, feel it. Gratitude is the language of heaven. It unlocks peace, like a key fits a door. Corrie ten Boom once said, "Gratitude is not only a response to grace, it's a participation in it." Her prayers of thanksgiving inside a concentration camp lit flames no darkness could snuff out. There's a woman named Noelle, a single mother of two who once believed stillness was a luxury she couldn't afford. Her days were filled with rushing daycare drop-offs, deadlines, survival. One evening after her youngest fell asleep on the couch, she sat by the kitchen sink and whispered, "God, I don't have hours. I only have minutes. But if you're here, meet me in the minutes." She began waking up 10 minutes earlier each day, not to do more, but to simply sit, breathe, and acknowledge divine presence. Over time, her anxiety lessened, She found herself responding with more gentleness, even when exhaustion tried to take over. Her coworkers noticed. Her children felt safer. Stillness became her hidden source, her altar between dishes and diaper changes. And always remember, this is not a war. This is a yielding, a sacred surrender into irreversible transformation. This change is not temporary inspiration. It is divine migration into identity. The Holy Spirit is not stirring emotion. He is awakening your assignment. And this assignment isn't sustained by intensity. It is walked out through daily surrender. What heaven has revealed to your spirit isn't just for mountaintop moments. It's for the kitchen mornings, the silent commutes, the tense conversations, the quiet decisions that no one sees. The presence of God will follow you, not just in fire, but in routine. Not just in the cloud, but in the closet. Not just in revival, but in rhythm. Begin your days with sacred intention, not by leaping into the demands of the world, but by bowing into silence with your Creator. Even 5 minutes before sunrise, before the scroll, before the voices, those minutes can recalibrate your reality. Let the first words from your lips not be urgency, but surrender. Here I am, Lord. Let today be yours. You do not need to feel holy to be holy. Holiness begins in willingness. Let your body become a sanctuary. As you sip your morning water, as you tie your shoes, as you make breakfast, do it with awareness. Your thoughts can harmonize with heaven. Washing dishes can become worship. Walking to work can become prayer. Can you live this way, where everything is sacred because you are? When anxiety returns, when doubt whispers, this is only temporary or you're not enough, pause, breathe, speak truth back into the atmosphere. My path is established by the Lord. My identity is not what I feel, it is what He declares. Let this be your rhythm, more listening than speaking. Speaking less to be heard more, to bring healing. Let your words carry the stillness of heaven, not to silence others, but to invite them into peace. In this world, kindness is no longer passive. It is spiritual resistance, a smile instead of sarcasm, a gentle word instead of retaliation, a withheld judgment instead of online outrage. These are the weapons of the chosen. Live simply, scroll mindfully, every show, every post, every room, it speaks to your soul. Guard your atmosphere like a fragile flame in a storm. What you allow into your mind fuels your light or dims it. You are not fragile. You are on fire in the furnace of refinement. This isn't your unraveling. It's your shaping. You were never designed to merely survive a broken system. You were born to reveal a heavenly design by how you live, how you love, and how you endure. You're not here to escape the world, but to redefine it by your embodiment of truth. Generosity is no longer just financial. It's spiritual, emotional, relational. It's how you give your full attention in a distracted world. How you offer presence without performance. You don't have to fix everything, but you can become a safe place, a human sanctuary where others remember who they are. Are you willing to carry that kind of peace? Not loud, not flashy, just steady like a lighthouse in thick fog. Let your life mirror the unshakable steadiness you've received, and when trials come, because they will see them not as punishments, but as proving grounds. The fire doesn't destroy what's true. It burns away the false. What you're walking through isn't erasing you, it's revealing you. Just as Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego walked through the furnace without being consumed. Daniel 3:23-27, your trial holds space for divine presence to walk with you and for others to see it. Could it be that your opposition is the stage God uses to confirm your sending? You are no longer under judgment. You are under commissioning. Let that awareness change how you speak, how you forgive, how you show up. Say yes to divine discomfort. When the Spirit prompts you to forgive release, quickly don't let it linger. When rest calls, honor it without apology. When truth knocks, speak it, even if your voice quivers, but speak it in love. These are not tasks. These are training grounds for glory. You are not just being transformed, you are becoming a living catalyst. Begin to see yourself as God sees you, as a vessel through which heaven's agenda unfolds on earth. This isn't about being ready, it's about being willing. And obedience always precedes overflow. Are you willing to say yes even when nothing makes sense yet? As you obey in small, hidden ways, as you choose silence over defense, kindness over sarcasm, peace over panic, the gates of greater purpose begin to open. The favor of God does not follow perfection. It follows surrender. This is how nations shift, not by titles or influence, but by those who live truly in secret. Let your life preach before your lips ever do. Let your kindness prophesy. Let your patience speak peace into atmospheres that used to drain you. When nothing around you resembles the promise, yet hold on to this. The path has already been blessed. Romans 8:30 says, "And those he predestined he also called. Those he called he also justified. Those he justified he also glorified." You're not proving anything. You're revealing that you've always been chosen. Move with clarity, not noise. Purpose, not pressure. The doors opening for you now are not ordinary. They are sacred assignments disguised as opportunities. Don't run through them. Walk with reverence. This isn't just a season, it's a shift in identity. And once the unveiling begins, there is no shrinking back. Not because you're being forced to move forward, but because the old shell no longer fits. What once felt familiar now feels confining. That's not failure, that's expansion. Isaiah 54:2 sings this promise: "Enlarge the place of your tent. Do not hold back." You are expanding. Your capacity is growing. Your assignment is unfolding. You are no longer hidden because you were never meant to be. Jesus declared in Matthew 5:14, "You are the light of the world. A city set on a hill cannot be hidden." You've been covered, protected, developed. But now it's time to rise, not to impress, but to illuminate. And if this word stirred something ancient and unexplainable in you, if it reached the part of you that recognizes truth, even when it contradicts logic, then respond not with performance, but with intention. Don't let this become a spiritual high that fades by morning. Let it become movement. Begin this very day by living as one who knows the verdict is in. You are chosen not because you feel it every day, but because heaven already declared it. You are ready, not because you have it all figured out, but because the gate has opened. The fashion designer and activist Aurora James, founder of the 15% Pledge, once said in an interview, "I didn't feel ready when I started, but I felt convicted. And I knew if I waited to feel ready, the moment would pass." That is the wisdom of divine timing. You move when God moves, not when your emotions feel safe. And then there's Jamal, a former barber in Chicago, who quietly began tutoring kids in the back of his shop. No spotlight, no platform, just slow faithfulness. Today those kids are graduates, business owners, and community leaders. When asked how he did it, Jamal simply said, "I said yes every time God whispered, 'Now. This is your now. This is your set time.' The Spirit is not forcing you. He is inviting you. Will you accept it? Will you cross through the unseen gate or settle again into the illusion of safety? If your spirit agrees, don't overthink it. Say yes with action. Let this be the day you live as one who knows you are always chosen. And if your heart is ready, speak it boldly, the light has come. Let this be more than comment. Let it be a covenant, a declaration, a first step through holy fire into sacred purpose. Chosen one, if something in your spirit stirred today, if something sacred awakened within you, then don't walk away unchanged. This wasn't just a message. It was a divine appointment, a heavenly interruption to remind you the time is now. You're not waiting on permission. You're not waiting on clarity. You're not even waiting on worthiness. Heaven already spoke. The door is already open. The light has already come. And now, it's your turn to respond. Let your life reflect the word you just received. Let your everyday walk carry the weight of this revelation. Don't store this moment in memory. Let it become movement, one sacred yes at a time. If this word ministered to you, if it pierced the noise and reached that deep place where truth lives, I want you to do 3 things right now. Like this message, so the algorithm doesn't bury what heaven wants to release. Share it with someone you know is standing at their threshold but afraid to walk through. Comment below these words as your declaration, the time is now. I say yes. That's not just for the algorithm, it's a prophetic agreement. You're stepping through the gate with your words. If you haven't already subscribed to the channel, so you never miss what God is saying next. Every message is birthed in prayer, crafted in obedience, and delivered with the fire of assignment. And whether you've sown into this word with a super thanks or simply with your attention and presence, I honor you. This space doesn't thrive on transaction. It thrives on alignment. So thank you truly for being here. You're a part of this move of God. And now, beloved, I bless you. I bless your decisions. I bless your surrender. I bless your clarity. I bless your hidden yes that heaven saw before the world did. May your feet be steady, even when the path feels unknown. May your heart remain soft, even in delay. And may your voice echo heaven, not just in volume, but in authority. You are chosen. You are marked. You are ready. And most of all, you are right on time. Go forward now and don't look back.